What's going on, everybody? Welcome into episode 50 of the MudWatch Sports Podcast on this Friday, February 7th, 2025. I'm your host, Zach Malamud. Before we get started, please subscribe below. Follow all of my social accounts. Let's start things off in the NBA as the New York Knicks are in action tomorrow night. A primetime 8:30 start on ABC. It's the Boston Celtics sitting in second place in the Eastern Conference, 36-16 on the year, taking on the 34-17 New York Knicks at MSG. What a matchup between the 2 and 3 seed in the Eastern Conference, and a couple of teams that could face off later in the season in the NBA playoffs. We'll see what happens there, but this is a monster game for both teams. Boston looking to right the ship just a little bit. I know that they had that 4-game win streak, and it looked like they'd settled things down towards the end of the month of January. But before that win, to start the win streak, they were 8-6 so far in the month of January. Not really, that's a good record, but not really based on the standards that the Celtics have set. Obviously, the defending NBA champs. They look really, really good, though, in the last couple of games. And then they take down the Cleveland Cavaliers on the road. That was a big-time win and really a prove-it win that, yeah, the Celtics are definitely still here and definitely still in the correct mindset and the correct shape for the postseason when that comes about. They did drop a weird game on the road again, or at home, against the Dallas Mavericks the other night, a 127-120 loss to Dallas, who did not have Anthony Davis, obviously had just traded Luka Doncic. It was Klay Thompson who had 25 points and Daniel Gafford had 15 rebounds. When you look at that, that's just a weird little loss for the Boston Celtics. Probably not one to think about too much, but just a little bit worried when you look at that kind of loss in a game that they should clearly win against a shorthanded Dallas Mavericks team. But they dropped that game after that 4-game win streak. So that's snapped, and now they have to go to Madison Square Garden to take on the Knicks. And the Knicks playing well right now. Obviously, all the stories recently have been about the trade deadline. What were they going to do with a guy like Mitchell Robinson? They end up keeping him. They don't trade him. They're waiting for him to come back from injury, and they end up dealing out a guy like Jericho Sims, who was not going to get a lot of minutes down the stretch here, as they have both Precious Achiuwa and then probably the return of Mitchell Robinson with already Karl Anthony Towns down low. So interesting stuff right now for the New York Knicks, and they're just continuing to roll right now in the Eastern Conference, 34-17, like I said, coming off of 2 straight wins against the Rockets and the Raptors. To be able to go 4-1 on that homestand was big time for the Knicks. Obviously, they dropped that game to the Los Angeles Lakers on Saturday night, the night that the Lakers ended up trading for Luka Doncic right after. So, I mean, maybe it was meant to be that the Lakers win that game. But in the end, I mean, you got to be very happy with that 4-1 5-game homestand. I mean, it really just proves that, yes, it's been a bit of a struggle for some of these games for the Knicks to go up against those bigger teams and the bigger teams in each conference. But they've taken care of Denver now twice on the year. They really handled the Memphis Grizzlies, who are the 2 seed in the Western Conference. And then they took down a couple of solid teams. I mean, the Sacramento Kings, obviously, that was before they got rid of De'Aaron Fox. But then you look at a Houston Rockets team that's really strong right now in the Western Conference, and the Knicks are able to handle them too. The only loss was to the Lakers, and the Lakers playing well right now, and obviously they still had AD and LeBron for that game, so a tough opponent, and they end up taking the L there. The Knicks do, but I mean, you got to be really happy right now. Knicks have been on a great stretch and continue to rack up wins right now in the Eastern Conference and winning 7 of their last 8 games. Feeling pretty good right now if you are the New York Knicks. So we'll see what happens. An 8:30 start tomorrow night. Make sure you tune in to this one. It should be a great matchup between 2 of the Titans in the Eastern Conference. It's the Celtics and the Knicks. 8:30 start tomorrow night on ABC. And let's finish things off today with a college basketball update. And what a couple of days we have in the world of college basketball. Let's start off with tonight's games, as we have two of them involving ranked teams. Let's start off with the not as big one. You got Purdue, number 7 at home, playing at Mackey Arena. They're taking on USC. USC, pretty solid team right now in the Big Ten. They're only 5-6 in conference, but they've started to rack up some solid wins, especially on their home floor. Beat up on Michigan State the other day and then grabbed a couple of good wins on the road. They've upset Illinois on the road this year. And when you look at Purdue, I mean, yes, they had that loss to Ohio State on their home floor at Mackey Arena, breaking that long win streak, that long home win streak, but they look like they've settled things down. Matt Painter and crew at 18-5 and 10-2 in the Big Ten Conference should probably handle business here against USC at Mackey, but we'll see what happens. And obviously USC has proven that, yeah, they, even though some of those teams are the big boys, they can really cause them trouble and really cause them havoc in any type of game. So we'll see what happens in tonight's game. 7 o'clock start for that one. The big one is in the Big East. It's 8 o'clock tonight. Make sure you tune into this one, especially if you're a New York sports fan. The Johnnies are on fire right now. Number 12 in the nation, sitting at 20-3 on the year, 11-1 in Big East play. First time they've had that sort of record since the mid-'80s, and now they get their biggest test of the year. They'll travel to Stores to Gamble Pavilion to take on number 19 UConn, who sits at 16-6, 8-3 in the Big East so far this season. Tonight, UConn comes in as 3.5-point favorites, total sitting at 141.5. Big part about this game is, can the Johnnies pass the test? Are they truly one of the best teams in the country? If they win this game after upsetting Marquette on Tuesday night, they really are a top 10 team and probably a top 8 or top 7 team when the rankings come about on Monday. We'll see what happens there. But as for St. John's tonight, they just got to keep it close and really fight till the end. I think St. John's has proven each and every game that they are truly a second half team. First half, they come out just a little bit slow, and maybe that's not the greatest recipe going into Stores, and UConn has a lot of energy to prove that they are the number 1 team in the Big East, even though they've had a couple of bad losses throughout this season, still sitting at 8-3 in the Big East Conference and have beat up on some good teams. So when you look at it, UConn really has a point to prove here that they are still the big boys in the Big East. But St. John's, on the other hand, looking for a win on the road. If they get this win, then they are truly for real. I mean, they are for real right now, upsetting Marquette the other day and really have gone on the road. And Creighton was a tough place to play, and they only lost by 1 there. So they got a couple of really strong games coming up, really tough games. In the end, UConn at home at the Garden, even though that may not be too much of a home game, it should be pretty split there between UConn fans and St. John's fans. In the end, this one should be a phenomenal game. 8 o'clock tonight. Make sure you tune in, as the Big East is officially back and St. John's is back. Number 12 St. John's taking on number 19 UConn tonight in Stores. And let's move things to Saturday's slate. What a slate it is in the world of college basketball. Let's start off with a lot of the big games here on Saturday, and we'll start off at 3:30 as number 10 Texas A&M travels to Columbia, Missouri to take on number 15 Missouri. And this one should be a great one between two of the really solid teams in the SEC so far this season. Both sit with a 6-3 record in SEC play on the year, and same record on the year at 17-5. So this one should be a great one. I'm expecting probably Mizzou to handle things on their home floor. That's been a very tough place to play down in Columbia, Mizzou Arena. I think in the end, Missouri has just a lot of scorers, and they like to rack up points. Texas A&M's defense has been just a little bit off this year. I feel like last year you really did not look at it too much based on how many points they were scoring, Wade Taylor and crew. But when you look at Missouri, I just think they'll be able to handle things. They do have to really keep Texas A&M off the boards. A&M, one of the top rebounding teams each and every year in the nation, and they really cause havoc down low in the paint. So Missouri, that's going to be their biggest key to the game, is keep A&M off the board. So in the end, I do think Missouri will just, their offense will continue to roll, and on their home floor, I think they'll handle business here. The big one, 4 o'clock. It's number 6 Florida taking on number 1 Auburn at Neville Arena in Auburn, Alabama. And Auburn, the number 1 team in the country at 21-1, 9-0 in SEC play. Florida gets their biggest test of the year, 19-3 and 6-3 in SEC play. Obviously, those 3 losses for Florida: on the road at Kentucky, at home against Missouri, and on the road last weekend at Tennessee. So when you look at those games, in the end, Florida has proven that, it could get a little bit tough on the road for them, and they just kind of have to prove themselves here. If they come up with an upset here, what an upset it will be. I just think Auburn's too good right now, and Auburn, in my mind, clearly the best team in the nation and clearly the favorite right now to win it all. Not always does the team that's the favorite win it all, though, and obviously that's a big thing for Auburn. Can't get too much pressure on them as the number 1 team in the country. They could drop a game here and there, but I think that's probably going to come on the road in one of those tough SEC environments. I just don't think it's going to happen on their home floor in Auburn, Alabama. I think they handle business here and take down Florida. What a matchup that'll be, though, between 2 of the big names in the SEC so far this season. Couple more games to talk through. Number 3, Alabama goes on the road to take on Arkansas, 8:30 tomorrow night. And when you look at Alabama, 19-3 on the year, 8-1 in SEC play, you should think, probably going to handle business here. They're going on the road, but they are still one of the top teams in the nation. I do think it's going to be a little bit tougher than people think. Arkansas, how about the Razorbacks with back-to-back wins, and Calipari, when it really got to his lowest, and obviously Boogie Fland out for the year. That's one of the, if not his best player down at Arkansas this season. When you look at all of that and all the pressure on Calipari, I mean, they've racked up 2 monster wins on the road at Texas, on the road at Kentucky, and then they won that other game on their home floor against Georgia midweek. When you look at these games, though, I mean, tough games that Arkansas are proving now that they could win, even without a guy like Boogie Fland. So why would it just be easy here for Alabama to come into Bud Walton and defeat the Razorbacks? Could just be an easy game in the end for Alabama because they are just so loaded with talent down in the SEC. But in the end, I just think this one's going to be real close, and Arkansas probably going to cover the spread. Don't know if they'll win the game, but this one could be really down to the wire, so make sure you tune in 8:30 tomorrow night. Do have to go back 1 second to the 6:30 game. It's number 2 Duke on the road, maybe their toughest test in ACC play all year. Yeah, you could say at the Dean Dome against Carolina, but I mean, with how they handled Carolina the other day, it should not be too tough for Duke if they play their game at the Dean Dome. But this one could be a little bit under the radar as a very tough game for the Duke Blue Devils. Clemson comes into this game 18-5, 10-2 in ACC play. And on their home floor, I mean, this is a very tough environment and one that Duke is really not going to want to go into. It's going to be a very tough game in the end. And Clemson, with a couple losses on the year, at Louisville is one of them. And then they dropped the game before this, to Georgia Tech on their home floor. I think that really stands out of, all right, they're looking ahead to the Duke game and really should not go under the radar. They have a very tough environment there down in Clemson, and it's going to be a very tough game for the Duke Blue Devils in my mind. I just think that what Clemson has to offer, I mean, we're talking about a team that's in the tournament each and every year, a very tough team out of the ACC, and they caused havoc in March I don't think it's going to be as easy as people think for Duke to come into Clemson and just come out with an easy win. I don't think it's going to happen, and I might pick Clemson to come up with the upset here. I don't think Duke's going to end up going perfect in ACC play. I don't think Duke really wants to go perfect in ACC play. All the pressure on them then heading into the ACC tournament. I think they'll obviously win the regular season and head into the tournament with a lot of confidence, but I think they're going to drop a game here or there. I just don't think they're going to go undefeated in ACC play. Some tough games coming up for the Duke Blue Devils, and I think this one might be the toughest. Going on the road to Little John Coliseum to take on the Clemson Tigers. Make sure you tune into this one, 6:30 tomorrow night. The final game I'll talk about is a monster game at 10:30, the late one at the McHale Center down in Tucson, Arizona. It's number 13, Texas Tech, taking on number 20, Arizona, and Arizona 16-6 on the year, 10-1 in Big 12 play. And when you look at Texas Tech on the other side, 18-4, 9-2 in Big 12 play. The Red Raiders are a wagon down in the Big 12. They've won back-to-back games, and they're on an absolute tear right now. 7-game win streak. How about it in Big 12 play? Their one loss, or their couple of losses at home, they dropped a bad game to UCF, and then they lost to Iowa State by 1 in overtime. But then ever since that Iowa State loss early in the month of January, they've been on a roll in the Big 12. And when you look at some of their wins, at Houston is the biggest one. They won that one in overtime, 82-81. They also crushed Arizona. They beat them by 16 down in Lubbock. And when you look at the last game, just taking care of Baylor on their home floor, 73-59, the Red Raiders won that one in Lubbock. I just think they're on a roll right now. Not going to be as easy as just Arizona on their home floor. Oh yeah, they'll handle business. Yes, they've handled a lot of teams so far this year, but I don't think this is an easy one for Arizona, and they know that as the Red Raiders, coming in on a 7-game win streak, like I said. So that should be a great game and a great slate of college basketball. Make sure you tune into all of these games, and obviously we'll talk about that on our next episode. Can't believe it's episode 50, and thank you to everybody that continues to tune in each and every episode. But that'll do it, obviously, for episode 50 of the MudWatch Sports Podcast. Please subscribe below. I've been Zach Malamud. Thanks for watching. Have a great weekend, and talk to you all on Monday.